On October 24th, 2024, Lil Durk and his crew were arrested on very serious charges. And since then, many have been wondering how a multi-millionaire and rap star like Lil Durk, who could have left his gang life behind him, now faces life imprisonment for murder, among other charges. But Lil Durk is actually the perfect example of why some rappers can't escape the gang culture they grew up in, even as multi-millionaires. That's why today we're taking a closer look at Lil Durk's backstory. Don't forget to like and comment, and enjoy the video. Durk Devontae Banks, aka Lil Durk, was born on October 19th, 1992, in Inglewood, a neighborhood in the south of Chicago. It was a neighborhood that had a huge impact on his life from the moment he was born. His father, Dante Banks Sr., known on the streets as Big Durk, was part of the city's largest drug ring and did business with underground figures such as Larry Hoover, one of the co-founders of the Gangster Disciples. Lil Durk was thus born into a criminal environment. And in 1993, when Durk was just 7 months old, the police began to slowly dismantle his father's drug ring, which led to his father's arrest. Drugs worth several $1 million were reportedly seized during his arrest. This shows just how big a player Big Durk was on the streets. Since Durk's father did not betray any of his accomplices, he was sentenced to life imprisonment just 1 year later. So his mother had to raise him, his 2 sisters, and his older brother, Dithang, on her own. Since his mother did not have enough money, they moved in with their grandmother. There, he had to share 3 rooms with 10 family members, while his mother worked most of the time as a caregiver. That's why Lil Durk often went out and spent a lot of time on the streets, where he quickly learned what kind of reputation his father had in the area. Everyone treated him with respect or slipped him money here and there, so that Durk wanted to follow in his father's footsteps even as a child. According to his own account, he started selling drugs at the age of 10, and from then on slipped deeper and deeper into the criminal underworld. Since his neighborhood was now controlled by the Black Disciples gang, and many of his friends were members of this gang, Durk also became part of the BD, even though his father was actually part of the rival Gangster Disciples. This meant that he became part of gang culture at a very early age, losing more than 30 of his friends to violence over the years. Chicago was in the grip of a gang war between the gangsters and the Black Disciples. Every time he and his gang lost a friend, they took revenge on the rival gang, causing Durk to sink deeper and deeper into gang culture. It was a never-ending cycle that was impossible to escape. At the age of 17, he became a father for the first time. This meant he had all the wrong ingredients to ever become successful. But alongside his gang activities, Durk and many other gang members became increasingly interested in rap music, wrote their first lyrics, and released songs on MySpace and YouTube, where they got a few thousand views. This encouraged Durk to take rapping a little more seriously, so in 2010, he formed a group called Only the Family, OTF for short, with his closest friends. Shortly afterwards, Durk and OTF joined forces with other Black Disciples members from the neighborhood, such as Chief Keef and Lil Reese, who were also rappers, forming the Gang 300. In August 2011, he released his first mixtape called I'm a Hitter, which generated 10,000 clicks for the first time. But alongside his music, he continued to cause trouble on the streets, which led to Durk being arrested in 2011. The police found a gun on him, which led to him being imprisoned for 3 months. When he was released from prison, Chief Keef released a song that changed the Chicago rap scene forever. In March 2012, the song Don't Like was released and became such a mega hit that overnight, all eyes were on the Southside Chicago scene. So just 2 weeks later, Durk released a single from his second mixtape called L's Anthem, one of the most controversial songs in Chicago rap history. It was this song, which went viral overnight, that not only landed Durk a record deal with Def Jam Records, but also ensured that from then on, the wars in Chicago would be fought out in music. In the song, which was even played on the radio, Durk dissed the rival gangs Brick Squad and Ruger World, prompting a Brick Squad member named Lil Jojo to start rapping solely because of this diss track. He released a song called BDK, which stands for Black Disciples Killer, and dissed Durk and his entire gang. This song also went viral, causing Lil Jojo to be hunted by many. Lil Reese and Lil Durk are even said to have shot at Lil Jojo, as Jojo announced on Twitter, but he didn't care. Jojo simply continued to diss them in songs and on Twitter, and even announced his location on September 4th, which ultimately sealed his fate. On the same day, the 18-year-old Jojo was shot dead on his bike in the middle of the street and died at the scene. Since Lil Jojo died in a gang war for Brick Squad and Ruger World, the two gangs have since renamed themselves Jojo World. while Chief Keef and Lil Durk mocked Lil Jojo's death on Twitter. For this reason, rumors continue to circulate that Durk and Chief Keef had put a bounty on Jojo's head. However, these accusations have never been officially confirmed, and Lil Jojo's murder remains unsolved. These events were discussed in the press for weeks, and even Lil Jojo's mother announced in a television interview that Chief Keef was allegedly behind the killing. Due to the accusations and all the press coverage, more and more people suddenly took notice of the new scene in Chicago, which enabled Chief Keef to sign a $1 million deal and Lil Durk and many other Chicago rappers to generate millions of clicks. Even though Lil Durk had to spend a few weeks in jail again in the summer of 2013 for renewed possession of a firearm, he focused mainly on his music from then on, tried to stay off the streets, and released a lot of mixtapes, which even landed him on the XXL Freshman cover in 2014. In 2015, he released his debut album, Remember My Name, which reached number 13 on the Billboard charts. A year later, he released his second album, which unfortunately flopped. As a result, Def Jam terminated his contract, and Lil Durk signed with Alamo and Interscope Records in 2018, with whom he released his third album. This label gave him the opportunity to start his own crew, which is why he signed many gang members or made sure they got a contract. Actually, it was an honorable thing to do, but in doing so, Durk brought back what he had distanced himself from years earlier: the streets of Chicago. Many of the guys who were now hanging out with Durk every day were still active on the streets, like King Von, for example, a childhood friend of Durk's who was known for having several people on his conscience. He had only just been released from prison in 2017, where he had been charged with 1 murder and 2 attempted murders. With this environment, it didn't take long for Durk to find himself back in court. At first, however, everything went according to plan. Durk's third album made it into the top 20 once again, and King Von was able to generate millions of clicks with his unique stories. But one event almost brought Von's and Durk's careers to a premature end. On February 5th, 2019, at around 5 a.m., they got into a verbal altercation with a 23-year-old gang member of the Vice Lords named Alexander Weatherspoon in the parking lot of a popular restaurant in Midtown Atlanta, which quickly escalated. Witnesses reported shortly afterwards that at least 13 shots were fired after the argument. 1 bullet hit Alexander in the thigh as he was fleeing, injuring an artery and causing him to nearly bleed to death. While Alexander was fighting for his life, a large SUV with the number 300 written on it reportedly fled the scene. Just a few minutes later, several emergency responders arrived at the scene and took the victim to the hospital, where he underwent emergency surgery. The police found shell casings from both a pistol and a rifle. The case remained unsolved for about 3 months until King Von was arrested on May 4th, 2019. On May 29th, the Atlanta police finally issued an arrest warrant for Lil Durk. The charges included attempted murder. On the same day, Lil Durk released a song titled Turn Myself In, and the next day, Lil Durk met with his lawyer to make a public statement. He stated that he had nothing to hide and was therefore voluntarily turning himself in to the authorities. On the same day, Durk was taken into custody until he had to appear in court shortly thereafter, together with King Von. During the trial, an investigator reported that a witness had claimed to have seen Lil Durk firing the shots. Another piece of evidence allegedly presented to the court was a surveillance video showing Durk's arm firing a gun. However, a firearm belonging to the victim, Alexander Weatherspoon, was also found at the scene, so it is possible that Alexander fired the first shot. Due to the serious allegations, prosecutors requested that Von and Durk remain in custody. However, the judge approved bail, allowing Durk to be released after paying $250,000 and King Von to be released a day later after paying bail of $300,000. In the same year, Durk's father finally won his appeal and was released after more than 22 years in prison. Things couldn't have gone better, but unfortunately, the good fortune didn't last long. While they were out on bail, Lil Durk and King Von were not allowed to have any contact with each other, so Durk focused mainly on his music again. He released his 4th album in the same year and his 5th a year later. And thanks to numerous collaborations with big names from the hip-hop scene, Durk finally made his breakthrough into the mainstream. King Von's career also took off, but he continued to spend a lot of time on the streets and even paid for the shooting of the most famous rapper in a rival gang called FBG Duck. Since Von and Durk were already out on bail for attempted murder, the police began to observe the two and their entourage. But King Von just carried on as usual until an event in the winter of 2020 changed everything. On November 6th, King Von saw another rapper named Quando Rondo with his boys outside a club, while Von and his crew were on their way to a party. Quando Rondo and King Von already knew each other and had even appeared together in a video. But shortly after the video was recorded, Quando Rondo signed with rapper NBA Jaimboh, with whom King Von had a beef, making Quando Rondo an enemy of King Von. That's why he attacked Rondo when he saw him standing outside the club that evening. And the whole situation escalated very quickly. After Von landed the first few punches on Quando Rondo, one of Quando's friends named Lil Tim pulled out a gun and shot King Von several times, fatally wounding him. Lil Durk was out at the time and had to watch his friend King Von get shot on livestream. But that wasn't all. Just 7 months after King Von, his older brother, D-Tank, was also shot dead. And it was precisely these two events, coupled with the gang mentality that had been ingrained in him since childhood, that caused Lil Durk to fall back into old patterns. But the public didn't notice any of this at first. Despite all the difficulties, Durk continued to deliver and released 4 albums between 2020 and today, all of which charted well. He collaborated with big names such as Alicia Keys, J. Cole, Burna Boy, and even country stars, and even won a Grammy Award for Best Melodic Rap Performance for the song All My Life. His last charge for attempted murder in 2019 was also dropped in 2022, and Durk announced just a few months ago that his entire criminal record had finally been expunged after all these years, making him officially a free man again. He checked into a rehab clinic in early 2020 to combat his pill addiction and even planned to build his own rehab clinic to help young people in Chicago. Durk also stated in an interview that he would now focus on Islam, which he converted to years ago, and that he could therefore no longer be part of gang culture. He even took a stand against violence in Chicago by founding a charity called Neighborhood's Heroes. Durk's dramatic change was also noticed by society, which is why he was awarded the keys to the city of Chicago. To the public, it really seemed as if he had finally left his gang life behind. In the background, however, things looked very different. Even though Durk was at the peak of his career, there was still one thing that remained unresolved, namely the death of King Von. After King Von's death, his killer Lil Tim was acquitted of murder on grounds of self-defense and began dissing Von on songs together with Quando Rondo. Since Von was a very good friend and member of Durk's OTF crew, voices on the internet grew louder and louder, demanding that Durk avenge King Von, and so the slogan, "Slide for Von," was born, which fans posted under every video of Durk, so that Durk slowly had to do something to somehow regain his respect. And that's exactly what he did. According to the police, Lil Durk put a bounty on Quando Rondo and Lil Tim shortly afterwards and arranged for 5 members of his OTF crew to fly from Chicago to Los Angeles in August 2022, where Quando Rondo was staying at the time. They searched for Quando and found him a short time later at a gas station, so they opened fire on his car. But instead of hitting him, the bullets hit his friend Lil Pup, who died at the scene. After this incident, Durk began dissing Quando and repeatedly left small hints that he might have been responsible for the death of Quando's friend, unaware that the police were already on his trail. This was because a member of Durk's crew, who had just been released from prison and had even been given $50,000 by Durk, was allegedly a secret informant working with the police. The feds observed Durk and his OTF crew for over 2 years until they had enough evidence to take action. On October 24th, 2024, Durk and several members of his OTF crew were arrested by the feds. They are now accused of being a criminal organization responsible for acts of violence and murder, among other things. With these charges, rumors slowly began to spread that Lil Durk had not only paid for the revenge killing of King Von, but also for the shooting of his older brother, D-Tang's killer. However, these rumors have not been confirmed to date. The fact is, however, that Durk is now facing a life sentence, and the overwhelming evidence clearly speaks against him. I'm curious to see how it all ends, and will of course continue to stay on top of it for you. But in the end, as always, I'm interested in your opinion. Do you think Durk still has a chance to get his head out of the noose? Or do you agree with me that Durk will now spend a long time behind bars? Feel free to let me know in the comments. Stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.